Okay, good evening, welcome everybody. I should explain
My
that because of the somewhat cranky system I use, which is
here for a week, and
is that Mary talking? She normally talks over me.
No, sorry. Oh,
I'm just explaining that I can only see either 1 or 4 people on the screen. So if you want to talk, can you raise your hand, or and Paul will tell me that you want to speak, and then depending who it is, I'll let them in. Are there any apologies for absence, Nina?
Yes, there's apologies from Councillor Ruth Newell and Lauren Hutton from Love Buckingham.
Righty-ho, thank you. And
Are we
are
happy
there
to-
any declaration? Somebody was going to say something then?
yeah, I was just going to say, so we need to check with the apologies that everybody's happy to accept the apologies.
Well, we know the reason for Ruth, don't we? Well, we know the reason for both of them. I think it's reasonable that we accept them. One's working and one's incommoded at the moment. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any? I've got one for agenda item 7 as a trustee of Buckingham Old Jail, which may not be obvious looking at the papers, but will be when we come to discuss it. Okay, can we move to the minutes of the last meeting? Is everybody happy with that? Everybody that was at the meeting, everybody happy with them? I don't hear any dissent, so can we take that as accepting the minutes?
I see 2 thumbs. That's a good thing.
Yep. Right, we go to the action report then, Appendix A. Anybody got any updates? Local businesses, Mary and Paul. We didn't have much success with businesses per se, but we can welcome Jo from Dandelions and her dog. Anything else to add, Mary?
No, just to welcome Jo, which I'm sure you'll be doing shortly.
We did that while you were talking. Anything else on the next item? Warren and Mary were discussing arrangements for a cup of tea for using BART.
Obviously that action obviously was pre-COVID, so I've certainly not contacted Mary to discuss anything further. But in terms of BART, we are expecting delivery of our minibus next month. So I think I will be starting to discuss opportunities in a COVID secure way of how we can ease BART into the local economy. So I will definitely start picking those up again.
Right, thanks for that, and good luck with it then, Warren. I think we've already said that once the old jail reopens, the museum reopens on the 15th of October, we'll be happy to offer £1 off the normal entry fee for people producing a BART bus ticket. Yes, Jo.
can I ask what BART is, please?
Yeah, Warren, what's BART?
BART is our community bus. So
Okay.
we, for nearly 2 years, we've been doing a variety of trials, and we've used the Burnwood community bus to make that happen. And we've been working really hard over the last year to get our own bus, and that finally arrives in the next few weeks. BART stands for Buckingham Area Rural Transport.
Okay.
But we'll probably just refer to them as BART, Buckingham's Community Bus, which is probably a bit snappier. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a tricky launch with COVID, but hopefully the first few months we can get it out and about and people get to know it exists again. And we really hope, fingers crossed, that we can really make a start on our community outreach in the new year.
Thank you. Sounds good. Thank you.
Anything else on the action report?
Mary has a hand.
I just wanted to add to the comments made. As Warren said, it was a pre-COVID action, and the idea, although it says in exchange for a cup of tea to get them, the idea is to bring people from the villages into Buckingham to shop generally, but by offering them something as an incentive. like you've done at the old jail. I will be obviously picking that up with Warren once he gets his bus, and we can start planning a few things for maybe into the new year, to do a much more organised thing that we'd intended.
I mean, one of the things we were talking about as a committee last night was if there will be an opportunity to do some small scale pre-Christmas type stuff. So there might be some opportunities there as well with local businesses.
That would be ideal. Yeah.
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 I think we
Okay.
need to
Anything else on the action?
we need to have a general discussion on what's happening at Christmas, I think, with the traders.
Could I remind you to sort of indicate that you want to speak so that Paul can call you in, rather than just cutting in across each other? Anything else on the action report?
Mary had a
Yes,
hand.
Mary.
Sorry about that.
Yes, Mary.
Yes, I just wanted to add in that, yes, as traders, we'll discuss what we can do at Christmas and link in with Warren to see what we can do with the bus as well.
Okay, great. Anything on the design guide and that yet, Paul?
So the design
No,
guide
because
is going.
meeting's not till the end of the month, is it?
But I was going to say there is a meeting of the Neighbourhood Development Plan subgroup on the 29th of September, if anybody else is interested.
Okay, right. And the last item on the action report leads us neatly into the next item on the agenda, where we can welcome Diane Fawcett, who's going to talk about Aylesbury Town Centre regeneration and see what we can pull from that. Over to you, Diane.
Hi everyone. Minor correction, it's Diana. It sounds a bit pedantic, but I work with a Diane, so it can get really confusing. Just to clarify, Paul, I'm just going to clarify here, I wasn't expecting to talk about regeneration unless you want me to.
No, I think you were going to talk a bit about COVID response and a bit about generally how you've engaged.
Okay, just before I started my slideshow, thinking, gosh, I'm going off on the wrong track. So thank you all very much for inviting me to come along and talk to you. I was originally invited, I think, just before we went into COVID, to talk about the work that we do within Aylesbury Town Centre. The work that we do, like every town, has rapidly changed in response to COVID. So I cleared with Paul, and I'm just going to run through the actions that we've taken through COVID and what we've learned, and then where we're looking for longer term. I do have a presentation, so you don't have to listen to me droning on, but I've never shared it on Zoom before, so I'm going to give it a try now. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to get it as a full screen, so you're going to have to put up with my slides to one side, I'm afraid. I'm going to sort of whiz through this. I can't see everybody because of the way my screen is displaying my slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, and at the end, I'll take my slides off and I'll be open up to any questions, if that's okay with you, Paul. Paul, you're still there, but I've only got 2 other faces. So I'm not ignoring anybody, I just can't see them. So we've basically set up a town centre recovery plan, like most areas. I'm sure, you know, we're not particularly doing anything different to what Buckingham are doing. And we've classified it into 5 areas. So we followed a national framework, and the national framework talked about what happens at crisis, which is during lockdown, but we actually took action pre-crisis. So as we started to get the heads up from central government that lockdown was likely, we did a whole load of pre-crisis work before lockdown.
Sorry, Diana, shall we all mute ourselves while you're talking, Diana? It might be easier.
That would be great, thank you. Great, okay. So we did a whole section of work pre-crisis, which was visiting all the businesses before we went into lockdown. So we went round each of the businesses, getting their email addresses and starting to give them advice and information about what was likely to happen as the town started to close down. Our next stage, as every town went through, was during lockdown. So during lockdown, and I'll go into more detail in this, we provided reassurance and support to the businesses within the town centre. We also provide provided lots of data that was coming out from the government. We did signposting and a huge amount of communication. We wanted the businesses to feel they weren't on their own. As we went into pre-recovery, so this phase is as we started to reopen, we established, like many towns, a leadership recovery team. The leadership recovery team represented various different business sectors. So we had retail, food and beverage, leisure. We had our community board that joined us a little while afterwards. We've got the Garden Town, the local town council, Aylesbury Town Centre Partnership, and retail. A very diverse group that was also joined by the police. And from that, we started to think about what support we needed to give the town and our businesses as they started to reopen, and started to think about our recovery. We were quite ambitious at the time. We set short-term and medium-term projects. Our medium-term projects are still in abeyance because things are changing so frequently at the moment. We feel like we're firefighting in response to government announcements. And then we've got very firmly in our eyesight transformation. So that's how do we reset the future, bearing in mind what's been happening within our town centres. We noticed several observations. So I've been working on the ground throughout the whole of lockdown, and that's been really useful for me because it's really helped me to identify what's been going on. So the first thing, which is really key and is going to come as no surprise, we've been anticipating that town centre usage will change over the next 3 to 5 years, moving away from retail and becoming a place for other things. Undoubtedly, COVID has accelerated that rate of change. So what may have taken 3 to 5 years, we're now anticipating could happen in the next 3 to 6 months. It's absolutely phenomenal and rapid. We're working with, in our leadership group, we also have somebody from the estate agent industry, and we're hearing about large numbers of people moving out of cities, not just London, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool. The last time this happened during a pandemic was in the Black Plague, weirdly enough, but then they saw masses of people moving out of cities. We're seeing the same thing now. With stamp duty being removed, people are coming out, looking in places like Buckingham, like Aylesbury. They're wanting to find houses with gardens and ideally with some sort of study space. We've noticed a 400% increase. One anecdote, we had a house go up 20% above the asking and general asking price. That weekend, they had 90 viewings as opposed to the traditional 6 or 7. By the end of the weekend, they had 10 closed offers, of which were 10% above the already 20% inflated price. It's gone mad. We think that's going to continue, and it's going to change the face of town centres as well. What we found in Aylesbury, and we're certainly hearing it from our counterparts, is Saturday is no longer the busiest day of the week, and that's because people are worried about coming in on what they perceive to be a traditionally busy day, and because a lot of them are working from home, they have access to come out other days of the week. Shopping is very focused. There's no browsing at the moment. Well, I say that in the last few weeks there has been browsing, but I think we're going to go back to no browsing. People come out with a reason, they're focused on doing it, and they're heading home again. Older people have started to return to the town centre since masks have been worn. We saw absolute absence of older people during the period before masks were introduced. Like every town, our antisocial behaviour has rapidly increased. Other people have moved into the area. We've seen fly tipping hugely increase, graffiti, street drinking, and we'll come on to that. What we are noticing, bizarrely, Aylesbury, that was always being a bit squeezed out from very local small towns and very large cities, we are faring much, much better than Oxford, Milton Keynes, Watford. People are avoiding the big busy cities and coming to the smaller ones. And just on that slide, we had some national information given to us yesterday, which we felt was quite shocking, produced by the Institute of Place Management. And the Institute of Place Management are saying that if current shopping habits continue with the COVID restrictions that are imposed, 87% of retailers are not going to survive longer than 6 months. An absolutely shocking statistic. So what have we done in the town? What have we done through the leadership recovery group that I mentioned earlier? We've sectioned our work into key areas, as I'm sure you've done. The biggest thing that we have done is business support. That's been absolutely paramount for us. As all businesses have reopened, and they reopened over a period of 6 weeks, each of them had a visit. They were given information, support, checking their COVID certificate was displayed, and signposting them where to go to get the right information. throughout the whole period, and even today, we offer one-to-one business support. So we will go out and do one-to-one support with them. We've offered them webinars, and my phone just doesn't stop ringing, which is absolutely fine because they need to offload. We've handed out floor stickers to our businesses, and we've given them advice on how they should be doing social distancing, how they should be wearing masks, and all the new measures that have come out. Bi-weekly, I gather all the national information that's coming out from central government and grants, and all the local information about who's reopened, what the issues are in the town, and we send that out to all the businesses. In fact, this week they've had 2 in 1 week, so they're a bit unlucky. They had the first one an hour after Boris's announcement about the new restrictions, and they've had one today updating them about all the furlough support that's available to them. We have seen an increase in new investor interest, which is really good news for us. New tenants coming through, taking advantage of the business rate suspension. We've also been working with delivery drivers. We've noticed lots of delivery drivers coming in. Our businesses are starting to rely on deliveries, so we need to work with the delivery drivers in finding them space to go. We've also proactively had a social media programme for the town centre, and we carried that on during lockdown. We felt it was important to keep momentum going and to be sharing information with our public. Our latest reach, I think, got 9,000 hits. And we've been supporting and encouraging our businesses to join in with the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. We've had phenomenal success with that scheme in Aylesbury. Public realm work, we've been working around the outside areas. We've been installing, as Buckingham has, social distancing signage. We've also bought our own stickers. We bought flower stickers because we felt that they were just a bit softer. Some businesses like the flowers, some businesses like the more traditional council look. We'd had, prior to the last week, been introducing regular street entertainment. We set up a monster safari trail, which was a national campaign supporting the NHS. We've had a small fun fair in, we've had Nerf gun activities, we've done online quizzes, colouring and writing competitions, and we had a really successful live market event. All of these have been subject to extensive social distancing and COVID measures. At our market event that we had some live music and street entertainment, and we had one old lady, it was her first time out of her house at all since March, and she burst into tears that she just felt so safe, and there was just such a nice atmosphere. We've worked really hard on closing roads that we feel are unsafe for socially distancing. So we have closed the top end of Cambridge Street, we've closed George Street, and we're now in the process of closing Market Street. We have actively visited and encouraged businesses and supported them with applications to apply for street trading licenses. Cambridge Street has gone from a dead end back street to a really vibrant road closure. We've given out bunting to the businesses, we've sorted out planters, road barrier covers, and it's been very well received. And the Harrow that was struggling with inside space have now been able to trade outside, as have a number of businesses down there, and we'll continue to work on that. Our next challenge will be to try and keep these road closures in longer than the 3 months that's permitted by central government. We've done a huge amount of work on the market. We saw the market, as you do, absolutely pivotal to the community during lockdown. We were very, very keen and worked very hard to keep our food market open throughout the whole of lockdown. We changed layouts, we set up sanitisation stations, we created entry and exit barriers, and at every market we had stewards in high-vis jackets reassuring and directing people, checking the traders were complying. We encouraged a lot of our traders to offer a pre-order and collect service, so people that were nervous could come in, collect their stuff that they'd pre-ordered, and we had a fast track system as well for any visitors that were vulnerable that wanted to come in and be fast tracked quickly. We've really worked hard on enhancing the environment throughout lockdown, and since we've found it really important to ease level of anxieties. So we've had music playing, we've put up bunting, we've put up seating that we regularly sanitise, we've put tablecloths on seats, we sanitise the tablecloths, we've set up a book swap area, again going through sanitisation, and we've had stewards on site the whole time to help and assist, and we've had some excellent comments from the public that have come out to use the market. During lockdown, we set up weekly Zoom meetings for all of our market traders. We guided them through all the social distancing processes and the COVID issues, directed them where to go for new terms and conditions. We've tried to do things on the market to make things a bit more fun. We've because we had queues of up to an hour and a half on some of our stalls during lockdown. So we had trivia quizzes where all the answers were obvious in the market square. We gave colouring in for the kids to colour in and bring back, and we put around the market. And all of the stewards were encouraged to smile at all times. We made sure we had badges on saying happy to help. And no matter how anxious we felt when we were out on site, we felt it was really important to welcome everybody, say hello, say goodbye, and it went down really well. Our market has always been viewed as part of our economic development process, and we use the market to hotbed new traders into empty units. We've currently got 3 market traders, despite what's happening, actually moving into empty units right now. And we've got another 2 looking. So our objective about hotbedding traders through that process has worked really well. And as Paul will know, we've been working hard to move to contactless payments for all of our traders, and we've finally got there. So they no longer accept cash, which has been very warm. Well, they do accept cash, but they now accept cards as well. So the market's been huge amount of work for us, and a very, I have to say, despite everything we've put there, incredibly challenging. We've had lots of antisocial issues. I'm not going to dress it up. We're no different to what we hear to counterparts of towns our size. There has been an increase in fly tipping. Absolutely incredible that because people haven't been able to or haven't wanted to go to the dump, we've had sofas, mattresses, you name it, just being dumped down back streets of town. We've had graffiti. So we've been working really hard, clearing up all our fly tipping, cleaning up all our graffiti. We've had a tremendous problem with bin storage in our town centre as more residents are moving into the town. They don't want their rubbish in their house, so they're dumping it on the streets, and because we haven't been there on site, we've had lots of rubbish being built up. We've got a problem with drinkers. Our drinkers move back into the town and sort of reclaim the space of their territory. And our beggars are just starting to come back in. They weren't in before. I think antisocial behaviour will continue to rise because it's very difficult to shoplift. And I think anybody that's looking, that can't use shoplifting as an income source, will be looking to achieve it in other ways, including begging. We've made lots of improvements across the town to tackle this. We're right on top of fly tipping. We visit twice a week, remove any fly tipping, clean up the graffiti, working with the businesses on bin storage, linking businesses up, working with the waste team. We set up task force with the local police, which we meet twice a week, and we've done focused focused programs on our drinkers and our beggars. We're now looking at street wardens. Other places have introduced street wardens really successfully, and I think that could work well in Aylesbury. And as I mentioned earlier, we work very, very closely with the police. So what next for us? Survival of our town. It's going to change rapidly. We need to be there. We need to be leading from the front, supplying support and information to our businesses. We're very keen to support government campaigns. We've currently printed off all their literature about hands, face, space. We're putting that around the market to remind people what to do. We see it's our responsibility to reduce the spread of the virus, but whilst doing that, we want to support our businesses. We don't want our businesses to be in the 87% category of not surviving. And whilst doing all of that, we have got ongoing town centre regeneration, which was alluded to earlier. We're currently looking at regeneration of Market Square in Kingsbury. We hope to start that within the next 12 months, and we're currently going through consultation with our stakeholders. So at the moment, we're on the front foot, we hope. We're scanning all the time what's next, and we're trying to respond to that. And that's kind of me, really. So thank you for listening. I'm going to try and switch this off now.
Well, thank you, Diana. So anybody got any questions?
John's got a hand up.
John?
Diana, that was really impressive. You've been working, sounds like you've been working your socks off in Aylesbury. So well done. I guess is my first response. I really like the idea of gathering together all the emails of the local retail businesses. I mean, that might exist, Mary. You might already have that, but having a direct line of communication with those businesses clearly has done you very well. I would also note that we've not had the same fly tipping problem in Buckingham, as it happens, although there was a rogue sofa knocking around apparently a day or two ago. I don't quite know where it ended up. Anyway, but I have a series of questions for you. One is, I guess I've got a list here, and I'll go through them one by one, but we can revise them in a second. One is, what's the budget for all this? Now, I mean, clearly you're a superwoman and you're doing a lot of stuff, but you can't be street warden and coordinating it all. So where's the budget coming from, and how much does this all cost? Would be of great interest to us, I guess, and who's been paying for it. What you say we, so I guess that's part of it. Who's the we in all the comments that you were making? The bunting, I've been trying to campaign for bunting from the old jail across to the building opposite for several months now. We seem to get nowhere because we don't know who owns the bloody building. So I don't know whether the bunting was just simply hung in front of the shops or whether you managed to persuade the shop owners to put it across the road. But I think bunting is great. The more bunting, the better. And any advice you've got on that would be really, really helpful. And also, do you have any intel on the rent situation? Because one of the problems that I think are faced by lots of retail businesses is that the rents have been accelerating and going up dramatically in the last few years, probably as a result of hedge funds moving into the ownership of local property in town centres like ours in Buckingham and Aylesbury. But what's been happening during lockdown? Has there been pressure on the landlords to reduce rents? Have you got any intel on that I think would be very interesting to us? And my last question, it kind of summarizes it already. What's been your key learning from this? And you know what, I mean, you shared a lot of it, but if you had to highlight one or two things that you've learned in the last few months, what would that be? And thanks again for your presentation. It was really, really inspiring and helpful.
Thank you, John. So I'm going to pick up the top thing first. You talked about budget and who is we. So just to clarify, I have a small team working for me in the town centre management team. I have a part-time market manager. I have a small amount of admin help, and I have admin support for events, but some of those have been put into other areas like Bucks Business First during the process. So when I say we, it's part of my small team, but also I have to say the leadership recovery team has been phenomenal. We meet every week, and the passion and the energy and the delivery for recovering the town and seeing us through has blown my socks away. So that when I say we, that's who I refer to. So coming on to the budget, we actually, John, we haven't been given any budget. A lot of it has just been my time and effort. Most of my staff were shielding, so they were working at home and pulling together some of the things. But in terms of pacing around and visiting the businesses, that is just effort. In terms of pulling the emails together, that's effort. We've always had a very small events budget. What we've done is we've just been very creative with our events budget, and some of the things that we weren't able to run this year, we've redirected that money into street entertainment. But we've also done a campaign for buskers. So we've been trying to encourage buskers to come in because we don't have to pay a penny, but we can have an element of control over what they play, where they play it. So that's worked really well for us. That's been really well received as well. We've got a lot of traction on that. So in terms of money, we haven't really spent very much. The stickers that I referred to and the posters, that all came out of the central fund, which was offered to every town so that they could dip into having those stickers. That came from the High Street Fund. Our bunting was just our old event bunting, John, nothing fancy. We've had lots of old bunting knocking around the office from different events, from Jubilee to the Olympic Torch Relay. So we washed it all up, got it all out, and just started making good use of it. So yeah, we've operated this on not very much money at all. We haven't needed to. A lot of this has been collaboration work. In terms of the intelligence about rents, you're absolutely right, John. Rents have always been upward rising, and it's been a real bugbear of mine for many years. We set up a landlord task force at the back end of last year to start looking at the rent issue and also attracting the right kind of tenants into the town. So I have some very good contacts. The rents, no, surprisingly, seem to have stabilised. My advice to the tenants that have been coming through to me is now is the time to negotiate. Don't take the rent that's on the table. Negotiate hard and don't be afraid to do so. I'm currently helping 5 tenants look for empty units in the town. They're all sort of family businesses that haven't really got the confidence to go in and negotiate. So I've been able to give them some direction about where my starting point would be if I was doing rent negotiation. And I have to say, they've all negotiated really good rents. So my advice to businesses is do not be afraid to go in and go in hard. Now is the time. The landlords are on the back foot. We're pushing really hard at central government. We've met with Rob Butler. We're very, very keen on setting up a landlord register. We think there needs to be public awareness about who owns what in town centres, and that gives us greater leverage in putting pressure on those landlords. There's too many absent landlords. John, I could talk about that for a few more hours, so I'm just going to sort of finish on that. Key learnings. Gosh, I haven't been asked that one. What are my key learnings? I guess the key learnings for me have been how much support the businesses have needed right from lockdown. They've needed somebody that they felt's been an ally, somebody on their side. And you know what? Sometimes I haven't had the answers. And in the beginning, the businesses would phone me up and they might cry down the phone for an hour. And I couldn't do anything. I can't, you know, I'm trying to help them best I can, but my toolkit is very limited, like most of us right now. But just being able to be there for them, I think, was absolutely paramount. When I send out my updates now, I get lovely responses back from the businesses saying it's useful to have one person pulling everything together for us. The emails take me a long time to collate. I would say probably 5 or 6 hours of scanning. And as I hear different things coming through, I pull it all together and try and work out what the businesses would find useful. Then I edit it down to sort of chunks, and I give them signposting. I send them off to certain websites to get more information. So I think the key learning for me is being there for the businesses and helping them, being an advocate. And I think the second learning for me was the importance of being responsible for not spreading the virus, so doing every action you possibly can at all times to limit that, but also doing it in a way where you can reduce people's anxieties. As placemakers, we've got a really important role to play for people to feel less anxious in the places they're going into. So as they're arriving, if we, you know, those first few times when I went into the market on my own, I couldn't sleep the night before. I was thinking I'm going to get this virus, and like everyone, there's all this hype at the beginning and anxiety was really high. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to smile and I'm going to say hello to every single person I see walking through the town. And you just notice people starting to relax their anxiety levels. So to me, it's about supporting the businesses, but supporting the public as well.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Do you want to come back on any of that, John?
Just one question: who employs you? Diana,
I'm employed by Buckinghamshire Council.
Oh, right. Great. Wish they could employ someone like you in Buckingham too. But there we go.
We also generate our own income streams. So for our events, most of our events, we move to being financially sustainable through sponsorship, income generators. We also manage public realm areas and we create an income from that. And our businesses do contribute to the work we do. So we get quite a lot of income streams. But I am employed by the Buckinghamshire Council, yeah.
I think there's any doubt your value for money, Diana, absolutely. And I just wish we had someone like you, you know, in Buckingham, employed by the Buckinghamshire Council. But we've got a good team nonetheless, but some more support would be great. But you're doing a fabulous job. Thank you very much for your answers.
Okay. Anybody else?
Howard wanted to speak and Dean's got a hand, and Warren.
Okay, Howard first then. Howard?
Howard's looking too comfortable. Oh, Howard's gone. I scared him off.
Right.
It might have frozen.
Let's go to Dean then.
Hi Diana, thanks very much for that. I'm
Hi,
sorry I had to join slightly late. I just joined from another committee. I am really interested to know about engagement with businesses, and I know you mentioned you've got everyone's emails, which is a really great thing. If, for example, you had an equivalent forum to the one we're in right now, would you have more representation from the traders and business owners than we have, or would it be very similar? Because is that the answer? Is it about better engagement with those businesses and getting them into a forum like this to kind of almost lead these kinds of forums so that they're the solution to their problems and we facilitate that? Is that what happens in your forums, or is...
Yeah. So you might have missed the very beginning bit, Dean, where
Yeah, apologies.
so no, it's fine. It's not a problem at all. So I felt it was really important to establish what we're now calling the leadership recovery team. And actually moving forward, I'm really keen that that evolves into some kind of board that we can manage our work, because the leadership recovery team has been phenomenal. So Dean, just quickly to recap, we have representation from, it's all right, it's no problem. We have representation from the service industry. So that would be the finance estate agent sector. I make sure that all the representatives have got links into their sectors and are mouthpieces. So they're not just a business speaking from their own heart, but they're representing the whole sector. So we have the service industry, the food and beverage industry, the leisure industry, retail industry, 2 people from the retail industry actually. We have the police, we have the community board, we have the garden town, we have the economic development councillor, and it's led by myself. So I set an agenda, I contact them, work out what agenda items they would want, I lead the meeting. And we always start off with, where are we? What's our baseline? So we get all the sectors to give an update. Oh, and we have the police as well. Sorry, I forgot about that. They're really important. I shouldn't forget that. So every area gives an update, and then we pull together from that the themes that are coming out from central government or themes that are coming out locally, and then we set our short-term projects around that.
Great. Thank you. And so, and what part does the town council play with it? Because you're obviously employed by
the town
Buckingham.
council. Sorry, the town council. There's so many people on the leadership team. The town council sit on the leadership team as well. So I work really closely with the town council.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Really, very important. Yeah. Sorry. There's so many people on the leadership recovery team. I should have written a list of everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Warren.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Diana, for that update. Really, really useful. And I think it's really good timing, because we have our first COVID and economic recovery meeting for the community board next week. So I think this will give us some good ideas to work on. So in terms of what we can do, what we can take away from tonight, we can certainly feed into a broader discussion and potentially some outcomes for the community board to help develop with a budget, hopefully. But it's just probably worth reminding ourselves that, of course, AVDC did delegate a town centre budget to us, which Mike will remember the discussions with the Trees Lane every year. And of course, we were then able to spend that as we saw fit locally. Hopefully the community board will give us an opportunity to do that again. And I think the strongest message from your presentation, Diana, is it's not necessarily the money, but actually having someone who can cajole and coordinate and lead the town centre management. And that's something I've been campaigning for in Buckingham for quite a while. We did have a part-time assistant some time ago, which didn't quite work out as we hoped. I think that's something we do need to have a think about, because to have someone who's focused purely on the town centre, who doesn't need to worry about everything else, but the economy in the town, and what they can do to help make it happen. I think that's a very strong message you've given us tonight. I like the idea of being able to communicate regularly to all the businesses in town. Mary does a sterling job, but it can't be easy when you're trying to actually run a small business yourself. So again, I think that points to having the support, physical support. And you mentioned the businesses contribute to Aylesbury. I suppose Aylesbury's got a slightly different business makeup. You've got more chain stores for starters. What sort of fees do they pay in that they find merits, that they find acceptable, and they know they get good value for money?
Yeah, that's a good question, Warren. Just to pick up on a couple of things you said, Mary, if you ever want me to send you what I send out, I'm really happy to include you in the distribution list. You can extract what's local to Aylesbury, but there's a lot of national stuff in there, signposting the businesses to various grants and support and information. So really happy to share that with you. And And Warren, just to finish off about what you were mentioning with working with the community board, our street wardens are going to be trialled, and we've actually agreed with the community board that they're going to fund that as a trial period. So that's really good news for us. We're working really closely with the community board, and a lot of our aspirations are very similar. So we're delighted to have them in our team, and we're very lucky to have them in our team. So Warren, to pick up your question about the voluntary contributions that businesses pay, this is going to be a real challenge, because how many of these businesses are going to want to pay? You know, we're hearing that bids are going under, business improvement districts are going under because businesses cannot afford to pay. Most of our voluntary contributions actually did not come from nationals. Most of our voluntary contributions came from the smaller businesses that wanted to be part of something because they didn't have that big national support section. So most of our members are actually small independents. Our big boys were the shopping centres, and they did pay 3,000 each. But before lockdown, Friars Square pulled out of it. So our whole financial model needs looking at. Our small boys were paying £30 a year, which was next to nothing. One of the projects that I've got on my list for medium term is to look at how we can make our work more sustainable without having to rely on contributions from businesses given their current difficult climate. And actually, as we start to reintroduce events, and we will be doing that next year, you know, we have to be realistic. Things are going to start to improve at some point. This isn't going to be the situation forever. There's going to be opportunities for wider sponsorship, for people to start sponsoring different types of markets, different types of events, sponsoring our buskers, getting some exposure through that. So I'd really like to focus my efforts on going down more of the sponsorship route so that a lot of our work is financially sustainable.
Thank you, Diana.
Okay, Howard, do you want to come in now?
Yeah. So my broadband went down for a few minutes. I lost quite a bit. Anyway, Diana, it's good to see you haven't lost your enthusiasm. That's been there all the time.
Occasionally tempered. It's been difficult, Howard.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about Cambridge Street, because that was always very much on the sidelines. All the action was focused in the town centre, so things can be changed. What I really wondered was, how do you actually monitor the effect of what you're doing? Do you have a survey that goes around the retailers to see how the footfall's going? Maybe giving an idea of the turnover, whether it's stabilised or going up or down? And just generally, how long do you think it'll last before we'll get back to somewhere near normal? Because I don't think we will actually. Normal is gone. We have to look at how a town centre can survive. And I think Buckingham is probably as you said earlier on, it's the big boys that are suffering most. And the smaller towns and the smaller shops are doing better because they can respond quicker to what people want.
Thank you, Howard. Really good question. So in terms of how we monitor what's going on in town, our shopping centre, we're very fortunate, our shopping centres have footfall counters. So we rely on them to let us know what the footfall trends are each day, each week, each hour. So that really helps me monitor what the footfall is like in town. We've also got a counter. So sometimes just one of my team will stand there clicking with the counter, because one thing I'm acutely aware of is the shopping centre footfall isn't always the best way now. Because, for example, what before would have been a reliable data set, which would have been people cutting through Hale-Lees, lots of people do not want to cut through a shopping centre. So we, to be honest, Howard, sometimes it's just good old-fashioned click. We've been doing it on our markets to see how many people are coming into the market, monitoring it on wet days, monitoring it on sunny days, even monitoring it after government announcements. So it's really interesting to see how that goes. In our leadership recovery team, we ask for updates, so we get indicators about what the spend is, how the traders are performing. So the estate agent world is booming beyond all capacity, but they're looking to massively reduce in April. Food and beverage has done really well during Eat Out to help out, but we think now with the recent announcements of 10 o'clock is going to really struggle. So we will monitor through the leadership recovery team and the feedback that we get directly from our businesses on the ground about how things are going. You mentioned about how long will normal last. We won't go back to what town centres were. we're going to have to get through this virus one way or another. So there's going to be a temporary norm of whatever that is, and that's what we're working on right now, this temporary norm. But this is going to create massive wave of change. You know, I've felt for some time that banks are going to be pulling out of town centres. You only have to see what's happened during COVID, that most people are doing online banking now. If you were a bank, wouldn't you be rationalising your portfolio? It doesn't make sense to be paying business rates in prime high street centres. Travel agents, unless they remodel, they're going to go under. Estate agents, nobody walks into an estate agent now. They do it all online. The only time they ever walk into an estate agent is to talk to someone about their own house. Estate agents are going to have to remodel considerably to offer a one-stop shop, and they're going to start pulling out of town centres. And I think this puts us in a huge opportunity. And I would love to get my hands on the buildings that the banks occupy, because they're beautiful buildings and we can really start to regenerate the town in an exciting way. So you know me, Howard, I'm always optimistic. But I think, you know, this will just accelerate the change that we've been predicting. We're going to have money moving out of the cities, moving into our towns, moving into our villages. We're going to have new entrepreneurs coming through. We're looking at setting up some sort of start-up business opportunities for these people coming in that are going to have money, that aren't going to want to work and live in London anymore. And Aylesbury, which has always struggled to find its feet, actually it's doing pretty damn well. And I'm really optimistic for places like Aylesbury, Buckingham, actually Bucks County as a whole. I think we could really benefit from this. I think it's really exciting times for us once we get through COVID.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Thanks. Anybody else got anything to ask Diana?
Yeah, Dean's got a hand, and then I've got a question.
Just a very quick question, Diana.
We'll have Dean first, then, shall we?
Sorry, Mike. Diana, the meeting I was in was the community board youth subgroup. So we were talking about how we engage young people in the community. I also work for the University of Buckingham, so we've got a vibrant student population who've just returned this week. Are you actively engaging with young people when you're having these conversations about how you get high streets back up and running and bring them to life despite everything? And if you are, how are you doing that? What effect is it having? What sort of messages are you giving to the university college population?
I'll be honest, Dean, we're probably lacking in that area. We've always worked very closely with youth. We work with Youth Concern in the town centre. They're part of our partnership. They get all our regular updates. We also work really, really closely with Aylesbury College and Bucks University. We do a lot of work with Ian Harper. We've sort of developed packages in the past around youth. We have specific areas on our market which are dedicated to youth. And in fact, before COVID, we were starting to develop a youth board that we were talking to local schools and going to get them to do like a youth event in the town that we could support them with. During lockdown, we haven't, I'll be honest, we haven't focused on one age group. We haven't focused on one type of population. We haven't focused on one religion. We've just focused on that general overarching aspect at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Okay, so I've got 3 quick questions. One's about the street wardens and what they're actually going to do and what their remit will be, and presumably they're employed by you. Next question is an unfair question. You kind of talked really well about what you do in Aylesbury, but you know Buckingham a bit. So what would your reflections on Buckingham be, the difference between Buckingham and Aylesbury? And my other question would be, if you worked for a local authority that bought a bank in Buckingham, what would you do with it? And Mary's got a hand, Mike.
Right.
Okay, so street wardens, Paul, if you look at the traditional model of street wardens, they're very much about enforcement. So it's very much, you can't do this, you can't do that. And absolutely, we need street wardens to be a presence on Aylesbury to say, you can't be drinking, you shouldn't be begging, you shouldn't be cutting through here with your fast vehicle, you shouldn't be parking on this pavement, you shouldn't be dropping litter, blah, blah. But actually, for me, it's also, and I've learned this over the last few months, I want the street wardens to be seen as a visible, positive presence in the town. I really don't want them to be seen as enforcement. So I'm really keen, as is the community board, that they're seen as approachable people. You know, if someone comes up to them and says, where's the nearest toilet, where can I get a drink, where's the bus station, the things that I was being asked all the time during lockdown. And they need to be seen to be approachable. If they're seeing groups of 6, to have the confidence, more than 6, to have the confidence to go over and say, hi guys, you know, you're, you know, in a polite, nice way, managing the social distancing queues at the banks, which are horrendous every day. So for me, that street warden, it is about enforcement, but it's going to be that challenge of having people that are seen to be supporting and helping their community. So myself and the community board are really keen on having that new aspect, and we're adjusting the job description accordingly. Most street wardens sit within a community safety environment. I'm not empire growing because I don't want to do that. I've got more than enough to do, but in some ways it makes sense for the street wardens to sit within a town centre environment, because if people are saying, look at this terrible street, what are you doing about it? The street wardens can say, actually, this is due for regeneration. You can make your comments if you go to this site here. So the street wardens need to be completely embedded in what's happening in the town. Buckingham and Aylesbury. Wow, I think, yeah, you're right. I do know Buckingham, not very well during lockdown. I have to admit, I haven't been over to Buckingham Way. I think Buckingham, I love Buckingham. I have got a rental property over there, so I declare a vested interest, and I never have a problem getting people to rent it because I've got a real passion for Buckingham. I think you're really lucky. I think it's really unique. It's really local. There is so much that you can build on. You've got a great centre. You've got some fantastic independent businesses. Pre-COVID, I was doing a lot of shopping in Buckingham. I think it's really exciting for Buckingham. I think there's great opportunities. That doesn't really answer your question, Paul, because I've talked about, it's not really about differences because they're a bit like apples and pears, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for Buckingham. If I was a local authority and I bought a bank, what would I do with it?
Sell it.
No. I would think about, where was that bank? Where was that property? What role could that property play in creating a destination footfall driver for the town? And how do we attract the right tenant to do that?
Brilliant.
So, for example, Paul, Lloyds Bank and HSBC in Aylesbury Town Centre, their location is right slap bang in the middle of the town. If I could get a high-end food and beverage operator in there, I would be over the moon. But they're not vacating yet, so don't. I'm not trying to kick them out.
I've just realised Nigel's in the room when I asked that question. There you go.
Or, you know,
Okay.
create something heritage, create something cultural. It doesn't have to be about F&B. I think you need to think about what role you want that building to be and how you can embrace that.
I think Warren's steaming gently at the moment because he's been after a cultural centre in Buckingham for donkey's years.
There you go.
Anyway, Mary.
Perfect, Warren.
Mary, did you want to ask anything?
Yes, please. Thank you again, Diana, for your great presentation and your offer of help. That would be greatly appreciated. I'll get in touch with you after. A lot of the comments that have been made, I think, my notes that I jotted down here. But I think the two main things that have come out of this discussion for me tonight is the importance of the leadership and the coordination aspect. As many of the things you talked about are things we've tried to put in place, touched upon in all the different groups. I know that the town council has been trying to do things. We have from a trader's point of view and all the different forums. But what it lacks is that that leadership and the drive to get people to commit, because one individual or a group of people cannot do it on their own. They need that. The idea of the leadership recovery team, I think, is very key. One I'd like to see sort of taken up and see what we could do with that. The email addresses and how to do that. One of our biggest bugbears is how to communicate with all the businesses and traders in the town. And so trying to get some formalized method doing that. I know when Paul's been trying to get hold of opinions for various aspects, he's had equally similar problems in just trying to get hold of people and knowing how to. The one-to-one business support and advice. There's been lots come out from the town council, lots coming out from Buckinghamshire Council, and a lot of the people I've spoken to have got a lot of their information through their maybe particular industry groups, and that's where it's been most coordinated, I think. Small Business Saturday group I've got information from, and Bucks Business First, etc., etc. But having the follow-up, the one-to-one, I think is really great, so that people know. I mean, shout out to Warren, thanks for information on the QR code information that came out in a haphazard manner yesterday. Did retail need it? Did, you know, which businesses were included? I know some of the other groups that I've spoken to, and people from those groups have had that now detailed out, so that we're clear as to, or the people that have been communicated with are clear as to who that applies to, and etc., etc. But you know, it's actually having a clear, precise way, a central way of cutting through all of the announcements that are made, to have that. I thought that was great. You mentioned bi-weekly updates again, which cuts across the same sort of thing, to do that, and that's something I think would be very beneficial generally within the town. And delivery drivers, you mentioned the fact that they have issues and whatnot. I think that falls into one of our next topics, particularly in the industrial estate, with the queues around the tip, because it's the delivery drivers as much as the individual businesses, customers, that are being affected by that. So I'll maybe leave that discussion till then. I like the idea of road closures. We've discussed that on many an occasion, to try and get something like that. Buckingham is particularly awkward with, if you close one route, there's not another option that isn't going to be even more problematic. But your ideas and guidance on some of the things that we could try with that might be interesting. And the idea of getting the licenses for outside trading. Again, that's an area we've discussed on many occasions, but never really come to a satisfactory answer, I think, more than anything. Street wardens, stewards, and the sanitation aspects of in the market area that you talked about. Again, I think that's something that is always down to things that the council have to provide the manpower to do, which of course they don't have the manpower to do it, and voluntary things. So I don't know how that would work in Buckingham, but I think that would be worth exploring with yourself. And one that's very close to my heart at the moment, rents, and the idea of a landlord register. When we've tried to deal with that, is the biggest outgoing for a lot of the independents particularly, and it's a very big chunk of our overheads. In fact, the majority of our overheads is rent, in some cases, certainly in mine. But the fact that there's no publicly owned, no council owned properties, is all private renters, private landlords rather, has always posed a significant issue with trying to negotiate things, because each individual person cannot really have a good negotiation with their own landlords. They don't have enough backing. So some form of negotiation support for lowering rents would be ideal, I think. And the idea that I think was raised by somebody just now on where you get the money from, the contributions, and how much it costs for individual businesses. Because one of the things we've had to drop within the Traders Association was any form of subscription to that.
Mary, you've gone on mute.
Yes, I had a message pop up. Paul muted me when he stood up. I think he got fed up with me talking. But my last point was on the payments for this, because we found that, you know, people couldn't afford to pay any subscriptions, didn't want to, for the benefit they were getting out of it. So that was something that would be difficult. But you also mentioned about becoming sustainable with events, and that's somewhere where the town council have the events that they put on in the town, and I don't know how that links in with how we could get that involved with the management area. That's something we need guidance from the councillors. But all in all, I thought it was a fantastic presentation, and it's really food for thought of what we can do here in Buckingham.
Okay, thanks, Mary. Diana, would you like to have a last word before we move on to something else?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on a couple of Mary's points. So, Mary, one thing that I didn't sort of mention very much was I'm very, very visible in town. So I try and pop in to all the businesses every other week if I can, with a high-vis jacket on. And sometimes it's just a case of opening the door and going, "Hi, you okay?" And the value of that is immeasurable. So it is about database emails, you're absolutely right, but also being visible. And sometimes I don't even pop in, I just walk past, put my hand up, and they'll either come out and talk to me, or it's them just seeing a reassuring person to think there's someone there to talk to. It has been really helpful, and any town can do that, really. Road closures, yeah, it has. I'm not going to deny it has been challenging. I've had to talk to every single business affected by every single road closure and bring them on a journey, and that has been challenging. And then I keep them informed along the whole way. And I think if you don't do that, you can fall into lots of pitfalls. Happy to share all my learnings, because that's been a real learning curve for me, the whole road closure and the street trading. And the events, Mary, yeah, I trialled trying to become financially sustainable with, you might have heard of something we did called a Waterside Festival. So year one, we broke even. And we did it through a collaborative model. I set up a completely different working model that I'd never tried before, wanted to see how it went. Year two, we had 10,000 attendees, and we were in profit, and it didn't cost the council a penny.
Okay, thanks very much, Diana. There's obviously a hell of a lot of food for thought for us there, none the least of which is trying to get hold of a team of 14 people and paying for them. But or at least one person. But thanks very much indeed.
The leadership recovery team, they're not paid. They're just different representatives from different organisations. They're not paid to do the work.
You said you had a team of 14, and they're all.
No, I've got a team of four.
Four.
2 part-timers, myself, and an events officer.
That's still 4 more than we've got.
Okay. Not 14 though.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Anyway.
Okay, nice to meet you all. Thank you for your time.
We'll move on, if we may, to item 6. John, do you want to introduce this? It's on the agenda, and we've got a paper as well to go with it. So over to you.
Yeah, certainly. I've written a short piece because I wanted to collect my thoughts about this into one succinct. Well, it's not that succinct, but one sort of particular view. Okay, so the motion then is that the working group is disturbed by increasing evidence of disruption to local businesses on the industrial estate next to the recycling centre caused by queuing for the latter. It is our view that current plans to install a view cam or a webcam to alert visitors to the existence of long queues will not solve the problem. It is our view that a booking system as used by MK Council would be far better at balancing the needs of local business people and those who wish to use the recycling centre. We called upon Buckinghamshire Council to install such a system. So that's the motion, and obviously it's been prompted by lots of calls on social media to try and resolve the big problem that we're still experiencing up on the industrial estate. So here in Buckingham, we have a huge problem with the recycling centre, in that large queues keep forming and preventing people from getting to other businesses on the industrial estate. This has been going on now for some weeks with no apparent reprieve. This is hugely frustrating for the business people concerned and of course their customers. Now, from an email received from an officer of Buckinghamshire Council, it seems they just want to put in a view cam or a webcam, so that people are discouraged from coming when they see that there is a long line of traffic. Even though this is not the only implementable option, they have selected this as the one way forward. Moreover, there is no evidence offered as to its efficacy. The officer proposed that another webcam should be installed to enable residents to see the view from the entrance down yonder slade. Visitors could then see if there is a queue outside before setting off. This would help reduce the busy times and spread visitors more evenly. It would rely on residents making the choice to visit at another time instead of queuing. We would also heavily promote it alongside messages about being a good neighbour and respecting local businesses. So that was the assertion from the email that we received. But I'm simply not persuaded that this will work for several reasons. Not everyone will know about this scheme or indeed be able to access it by the internet. For people driving from some distance, they may see no queue via the webcam when they set off, but then discover one when they arrive 20 minutes or so later. Perhaps other people have seen there's no queue as well, so they all converge at the same time. And of course, the same might happen in reverse. They might see a long queue, decide not to come, and then turn up, and then there is a queue. So people will always gamble anyways, and they'll take it, and then perhaps they might take a book with them, ignoring the impact on local businesses. And it won't really solve the problem. There will still be long queues. And critically, I repeat this again, there is no evidence to support the value of this intervention. It's simply asserted that it might. The Shire Council seem to think that a booking system, like they have in Milton Keynes, will result in deterioration of the service. Buckinghamshire Council is asserting that a booking system would result in far fewer residents being able to use the service. So I wrote and asked MK for information. It is vital that we use evidence to make our decisions. Now, I've received some enormously helpful information from Councillor Emily Darlington, who is their cabinet lead on waste disposal for Milton Keynes, informed, of course, by her officer colleagues. She told me the following. Over 80,000 appointments have been made in the last few weeks. All the sites are running with no queues since reopening. The sites are about 80% booked up, and residents can book by phone or online up to 7 days in advance. During the first few weeks of reopening, and while appointments could still only be made by phone, the wait times were indeed long, but this has been significantly reduced with the introduction of an online form. They've had no queues as a result of introducing the booking system, except one day when the slots were double booked in the early days. And they don't have queues because the number of slots and timings have ensured that residents can get in and get out in the time allocated. There is also 20% of slots not taken up each day, so they have more slots than indeed demand is asking for. Now, regarding the reduction in waste in environmental terms, it is one of MK's ambitions, as indeed it should be ours too, to become the greenest city and reduce the amount of waste created. So if there are fewer visits, that's a good thing. Less waste and fewer journeys. So MK waste does appear to have dropped as a result, perhaps of this new system, but also a result of perhaps a myriad of other factors. Now, firstly, to them, it became apparent that people from outside of Milton Keynes were using their tips as they were free and convenient for people living near the MK borders. So this system, of course, stopped that from happening. Secondly, it has cut down on the abuse of the resident system by businesses who were using the tips to dispose of their waste and not pay. Again, so a booking system would overcome that as well. And thirdly, anecdotally, residents are thinking through what and when they are disposing of. Some are making less frequent trips, but with more items. Some are making more conscious choices about what they throw away, which is very good for the environment. Now, she said, though, and if Bucks does not introduce appointments, and she saw that MK officers can help share their good practice. They've learnt a lot about how to optimize the booking system and are currently upgrading it to make it work even better. And lastly, Councillor Darlington added, quote, any change is controversial, you will have residents and, dare I say, councillors who object to a booking system on principle. But I get way more comments about how people like, some even love, the new system and hope we will keep it post social distancing. And so, due to all this, I propose this motion to you. We have a workable solution to the queuing problem right on our doorstep. Surely it makes sense to emulate this good practice, this evidence-based good practice, and tackle the problems of queues robustly.
Anybody disagree with that?
I suppose I should declare an interest that I'm hardly going to be able to vote on a motion against the council that I'm representing, but I'm happy to comment on this, but I certainly won't be voting for or against it because I think that would be a little bit odd.
Warren was simply calling upon the council to implement such a system. That's not against Buckinghamshire Council, it's asking them to do something different.
Ruth and Dean have both got hands.
Sorry, who?
Ruth and
me.
Dean.
I just wanted to check that there'd been no increase on fly tipping. I think it's a really good idea to do that, but I know that sort of countrywide there's been a problem with fly tipping. So I was just wondering whether Milton Keynes had noticed any impact on that.
Can I answer, Chair?
Yes, was that mentioned, John?
No, Emily did not raise that as an issue in the correspondence that I had with her, so I can assume that it's not been a huge problem. And certainly I think there is evidence, anecdotally again, but evidence that people drive up to the recycling centre now, see the queues and go and say to themselves, so this for a game of monkeys, I'll go off and get rid of it somewhere else. Certainly I've discovered rubbish just left near the recycling centre when I've been on my various walks around town in the last few weeks. So there's no evidence that either system will make any difference. But what we do know is that the system that brings in the booking system should regulate it much better than the current, effectively, free-for-all.
Okay.
Okay, Dean?
I think this decision to do the booking system will be controversial and it's going to cause a bit of upset because some people think it's never going to work. You might notice I was just on the phone because my parents use the dump in Milton Keynes, and I just asked my mum and said, what's the new system like for booking to use the dump? And she said, it's so much better instantly because they can actually get their stuff to the dump, and that was her answer. And I trust her opinion. I think that you're definitely going to get some opinions that are against the idea of booking because it's the unknown. But I think possibly it's one of those things that once it gets into the flow, it'll probably work very well. And I think we might have to get past the initial objection from residents. But I think over time, it might be something that residents warm to and see the benefits of. But it may not be an instant thing. We might have to kind of do that bit of that bumping up against each other for the short term for a better result a bit further down the line.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, Howard had a hand up.
All right, Howard.
I've been up the tip a couple of times and I've never had any problem. The first time I just drove straight in and under the boot to get out what was a plastic bin, or used to be a water storage. And the guy came up to me and said, I'll have to charge you for that. So it was just a way it was said. I just shut the boot and went up to Northampton to Toaster. There's a certain education that's got to be done with some of the people there. If he'd said to me, well, it's going to cost you £5, I would have probably paid it. But it's the aggressive attitude I didn't like. And as far as having a booking system goes, I did write and suggest that they have a booking system based on the peak times. You don't need to monitor it 24 hours a day or even for the hours it's open. But if you go outside the peak times, there isn't a problem. But the biggest problem is that the tip is too small. And I used, as I said, I went to Toaster. I've been to one in Bournemouth. I've been to the Milton Keynes one, and it's never been a problem because they're bigger tips, and it's the queuing outside that's the problem. They're only allowing a few people in. And I think they should have a booking system. And if they don't want to do it all the time, the tips open, they just restrict it to the times then there's a peak number of people going in there. And all they've got to do is if you email in and say, I want to go at 1 o'clock, or whatever their peak time is, just send an email back with a pass to say, yes, you can. Well, no, you can't. It's not, they don't have to have a very sophisticated system, and it probably costs them a lot less than putting in a CCTV system.
So if I get it right, everybody that's spoken so far has been generally in support of the motion that we try and get a better system, get them to introduce a better system, and thereby remember it's all about reducing the queues, which are upsetting the businesses and preventing deliveries and all the rest of it. So are we agreeing to the
Mary's got a
behind the
hand,
motion?
Mike.
Sorry?
Mary's got a hand up now.
Okay, Mary?
I am agreeing, but I just wanted to ask a question. I was hoping that Charlie could be here tonight, as I know he has been in consultation with the businesses on the trading estate, because that's one area where they do have a bit of a coordination amongst them. Warren, have you had any of the feedback of what's been happening in their discussions? Because the businesses themselves may have come up with some ideas of what would ease the situation from their point of view, because I know it is deliveries as well as customers that are affected.
Okay, Warren, do you want to comment on that?
There was actually a meeting this evening that Charlie was having, so I haven't heard what the feedback is from that meeting yet. But yes, you're quite right. There's been some useful discussions, I think, between Charlie and some of the businesses up there. But yeah, sadly, I don't know what the recommendations or any suggestions are coming up.
Right, thanks. So are we basically agreeing with the principle behind the motion that we ask them to look at and perhaps install a booking system?
Agreed.
Do I take silence as being consent? Yes, I do. Okay, we'll move on then to item 7, the story of Buckingham. We've received 2 reports from Nigel. I think he's there, is he, Nigel? Or is he gone?
I can see him, and he's trying to talk.
Nigel. Is he talking and on mute, or?
It doesn't say that
Come
he's muted.
closer.
You come really close.
I hear nothing.
No, I can't hear you at all, Nigel.
Well, we've had 2 reports. One's with your agenda, his initial report, and then he did email around an update just a couple of 3 days, no, probably about a week ago, and it's concerned with getting some publicity, etc., around the 42 skeletons that were found up adjacent to the cemetery. I think at the moment all we need to do is note what he says, particularly on the second one, which is that we've got to wait about a month before any action is likely, which means getting the reports done on that. He did suggest that he'd inquire to see if he could have them in the old jail museum. He can't, because there's a policy at the old jail, which is why I declared an interest at the outset. We've got a policy of not displaying human remains. We don't have the facilities to do that and keep them conserved in an appropriate way. So that idea is out. But otherwise, I think we simply note and thank Nigel for that report and hope he brings his voice to the next meeting. We'll move on then to Bucksplore, a verbal report from the communication clerk.
Hey everyone.
Ah, we have somebody.
So it's been a fairly quiet summer for Bucksplore. I think we hit that gap between everyone who had been in lockdown and wanted something to do to try and explore their town, and the tourists starting to come back, which I'm sure Emma will tell you has been more recent. But we've still had About 17,000 people try it, well, unique IPs try it now, and that can, overall that number can be bigger because it doesn't include people using it more than once. Generally, we get at least a few users every day. Emma tells me that she's often giving people that come into the Tourist Information Centre, getting them started on using it so they can go around the town. The official project end date was the end of December, but we've discussed it with National Lottery Heritage Fund and they're happy to extend it until the end of March, because the one outstanding element of the project that we couldn't do was the launch event. I had hoped when I asked for an extension that we would be able to do something physically at some point, maybe in the spring. I don't know if that's realistic or not now, but the Heritage Fund are being very flexible. So we can take an opinion on that closer to the time as to whether we do a physical launch event or whether we do something different. And it's great to hear Diana and all the ideas that she's had about events that they've done, though, that included social distancing. So if we can do something, I would like to, but it requires a bit more thought. What's the other main interesting thing is that we're working on getting it on the Google Play Store, but we're not quite there yet. It's going to take a little bit longer.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
Good to hear it's still getting traction. Anyway, move on, shall we, to item 9, COVID-19 update from the town clerk.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a kind of general catch-all of things we haven't already covered around COVID-19. So the pedestrian crossing is still there on bottom of Morton Road, which seems to have bedded in and is a bit helpful, I think. Obviously, it's time limited at the moment, and the town council would still like a permanent crossing there one day, but that's, at least we've got that for now. The signage and the stickers are still up, and we're replacing those, encouraging people to social distance appropriately around the town. We're not doing anything else at the moment. In terms of the town council, the market is actually doing really well. Obviously, it's more distanced. Both our markets now have waiting lists, and have done, I would say, fairly well through the period. I think people do prefer to be outside, and I'm sure some of what Diana said reflects well for us in terms of the market. And we're thinking about what else we might be able to do with the market come Halloween and come Christmas. But obviously, with the social distancing, there's a limited amount of space, and the big problem in Buckingham is always space that we've got. Town council services are almost all up and running fully now. Obviously, there's less room, or there's less capacity within Lace Hill to smaller groups. Shop mobility is open on Saturdays, but not Tuesdays. Lower take up than normal. Obviously, it's hard to really properly sanitize a mobility scooter between uses, so it's kind of use it on a Saturday, clean it as best we can, but then wait till next Saturday when anything that was on it would have gone anyway. And the TIC, Emma is doing quite well, and we're having legitimate tourists come into the town still, which is a good thing.
Good.
That's
Thank you.
it for now.
Anybody got any comments? No? Well, move on then to item 10, website update from Emma.
Yeah, it's just a quick update. So since it launched in July, we've had an average of about 20 people a day going on. That's 1,600 unique visitors. And it's from all over the world as well. So the highest countries are Canada and the US, but we've had people from places like Tanzania, India, Finland, Vietnam, loads of different places logging on, which is really good. The different traffic sources, it's pretty equal between direct going to the website and social media, people getting to it through social media. The one thing we really need to work on though is only 234 unique IP addresses have got to it through a search engine. So I really need to look at how we can improve that. That's a job for me next week. And then my next thing is every Wednesday from next week, I'm going to be going around to different businesses and attractions all in Buckingham and the surrounding area to try and get them to participate in the different listings that we put on there.
Thanks, Emma. That's great. Anybody got comments on that?
Yeah, just something. I wonder if it's possible to weave in some mention of our royal charter in the website, because I suspect if you've got Buckingham and royal together, we might get a few more hits on search engine optimization. I know that some people confuse Buckingham with Buckingham Palace, but if we had royal in there, just mentioning the royal charter, we might perhaps begin to get a bit more exposure.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Warren and Dean both had hands up.
Okay, could I just say that on the Royal Charter bit, I've got an extract in plain English of the original charter. It might be useful. Give me a shout, Emma, if you need it. Warren?
Yes, please.
Right.
I was just trying to refresh my memory of the new website, and I've just found by accident that the buckinghamuk.info is still showing the old website.
That should have been taken down.
I mean, my cache shouldn't.
That was something Claire was working on. I know she had some issues from some web browsers. It was working, and from other web browsers, it wasn't. I'll check with her and see where she is with that.
Okay.
Are you sure it's not cached, Warren?
I'd be surprised because that normally isn't an issue, but I will let you know.
After we shut it down, and we stalled it, and then we shut it down. We had something like 3 weeks to change our minds or something, and I checked then, and I couldn't get the damn thing up again. So I thought it had gone.
No, my cache is emptied and it's still there.
I'll double check on that tomorrow.
Okay.
Try going incognito, Warren, and see whether that works.
I will play around with it.
And Dean had a hand.
Emma, I wanted to just talk on behalf of the university. We've had some really positive feedback from our marketing department about the look and feel and style of the website, and it actually supports our messages to potential international, national, regional students, because it's a really good advert for the town, and students, when they're coming to, they're looking at Buckingham, they're not just looking at the university, they're looking at the kind of community and environment they're coming to. And I think it does a really good job of telling us what the town's like. And so we're very supportive of it. And then anything we can add to it or help you with in terms of events that we're putting on. I know you've been really supportive in promoting Anthony's fireside talks recently on there and things like that. But generally the feedback is very positive. And you might find that some of those Tanzania visits and things like that are as a result of our international students actually looking around and researching the area and finding that great website that promotes and enhances the impression of the town and the university even more. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, that's all useful stuff. Anybody else? No? We'll move it to an end then, to a close. I've got no particular announcements other than to thank Diana again for her very useful contribution. She's given us a lot of stuff to go away and ponder. And for everybody else's contributions, of course. The next meeting is on the 11th of November. Look forward to seeing you all again then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Take care.